The soil was cold against his face when Marcus awakened 6 feet underground, his fingernails clawing desperately at the wooden coffin lid above him. But something was wrong, terrifyingly wrong. The hands he saw in the dim light weren't his own. They were smaller, more delicate, with chipped purple nail polish he'd never worn. His reflection in the polished wood showed a stranger's face staring back, a young woman with dark hair and frightened eyes. Yet somehow, impossibly, he could feel his own consciousness trapped inside this foreign body, experiencing her final moments of terror as if they were his own memories. Marcus had been pronounced dead for exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds following a massive heart attack. The paramedics had worked frantically to revive him, and when his eyes finally fluttered open in the hospital bed, he'd expected relief. Instead, he'd awakened with the vivid, haunting memories of someone else's murder, someone he'd never met, whose name he didn't even know. The twisted psychological thriller that was about to unfold would challenge everything he thought he knew about life, death, and the dark secrets that connect us all. The first few days after his near-death experience, Marcus tried to convince himself that what he'd experienced was nothing more than a hallucination, a cruel trick his oxygen-deprived brain had played on him. But the memories were too vivid, too specific. He could still taste the metallic fear in her mouth, feel the rough rope binding her wrists, hear the sound of dirt being shoveled onto the coffin lid. Every detail was seared into his consciousness with an intensity that made his own memories pale in comparison. His wife, Sarah, watched him with growing concern as he became increasingly withdrawn, jumping at every unexpected sound and refusing to sleep in complete darkness. The doctors assured him that post-traumatic stress following a cardiac event was normal, but Marcus knew this was something far more sinister. He'd lived through someone else's final moments, and the knowledge was slowly consuming him from the inside out. Unable to shake the haunting visions, Marcus began researching recent missing persons cases, scrolling through endless social media profiles and police reports late into the night. His heart nearly stopped when he found her, Emma Chen, a 28-year-old graduate student who'd vanished 3 weeks before his heart attack. The face in the photograph was identical to the one he'd seen reflected in the coffin lid, down to the small scar above her left eyebrow and the way her dark hair fell across her shoulders. The missing person report mentioned she'd been wearing purple nail polish the night she disappeared, the same chipped polish he'd seen on those desperate hands clawing at the coffin wood. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the impossible truth. Somehow, during those 4 minutes and 37 seconds when his heart had stopped, his consciousness had connected with Emma's final moments. But how? And more importantly, why? The psychological weight of carrying Emma's memories began to fracture Marcus's sense of reality. He found himself flinching at the sound of shovels scraping against concrete, his hands instinctively moving to his wrists as if feeling phantom rope burns. During family dinners, he'd suddenly taste soil in his mouth, causing him to excuse himself and rush to the bathroom, retching violently. His behavior grew increasingly erratic. He'd call out Emma's name in his sleep, causing Sarah to shake him awake with tears in her eyes. The boundary between his identity and Emma's was blurring in ways that terrified him. He began to question whether his own memories were real or if Emma's trauma was somehow overriding his consciousness. The most disturbing part wasn't just that he'd experienced her death, it was that he was beginning to feel like he was becoming her, losing pieces of himself with each passing day. Desperate for answers, Marcus decided to visit the area where Emma had last been seen, a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of town where she'd been walking home from the library. As he stood on the dimly lit street corner, something strange began to happen. The memories weren't just replaying anymore, they were guiding him. He felt an invisible pull toward a narrow alley between 2 abandoned buildings, his feet moving without conscious direction. The sensation was like being a passenger in his own body, watching helplessly as Emma's memories used his physical form to retrace her final steps. With each step deeper into the alley, Marcus felt the overwhelming presence of her fear, her confusion, her desperate hope that someone would find her. The psychological thriller of his situation was becoming clear. He wasn't just remembering Emma's death, he was being led somewhere specific, for a purpose he couldn't yet understand. The alley ended at a rusted metal door that seemed oddly familiar, though Marcus was certain he'd never been there before. Emma's memories whispered that this was where it had all begun, where she'd been taken, where her nightmare had started. But as Marcus reached for the door handle, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Fresh tire tracks in the dirt. Recent footprints leading to and from the entrance. Someone was still using this place. The twisted realization hit him like a physical blow. Emma might not have been the only victim. Her killer was still active, still hunting, still using this location as his base of operations. Marcus's hands trembled as he pulled out his phone, torn between calling the police and the growing compulsion to see what lay beyond that door. Emma's memories were screaming at him to run, but another part of him, the part that had somehow inherited her need for justice, demanded that he step inside and confront the truth. The interior of the building was a makeshift workshop filled with tools that chilled Marcus to his core. Shovels, rope, and wooden boards, everything needed to construct makeshift coffins. But it was the photographs lining the walls that truly broke his psychological defenses. Dozens of faces stared back at him, all young women, all bearing the same expression of terror he'd seen in Emma's final moments. This wasn't just about Emma, this was about a serial killer who had been burying his victims alive for years. Marcus felt Emma's consciousness surge within him, her memories providing context for the horror surrounding him. She'd been victim number 17, and from the looks of the preparation area, the killer was already planning number 18. The psychological thriller had evolved into something far more sinister. Marcus realized he hadn't just inherited Emma's memories, he'd been chosen to stop her killer before he could claim another life. As Marcus photographed the evidence with shaking hands, footsteps echoed from the building's entrance. The killer was returning. Emma's memories flooded him with recognition. She'd heard those same measured footsteps approaching her prison 3 weeks ago. But this time, Marcus had an advantage she hadn't. He knew what was coming. He quickly hid behind a stack of wooden boards, his heart pounding so loudly he was certain it would give him away. The man who entered was unremarkable, middle-aged, average height, the kind of person who could disappear into any crowd. But Marcus recognized him from Emma's memories, the false kindness in his eyes when he'd offered to help her with directions, the way his expression had changed when he'd realized she was isolated and vulnerable. The psychological twist was horrifying. This ordinary-looking man had been systematically hunting and killing women for years, and Emma's spirit had somehow chosen Marcus to be her instrument of justice. The killer moved through his workshop with practiced efficiency, preparing for his next victim. Marcus watched in horror as the man sorted through photographs, selecting his next target with the casual indifference of someone choosing what to have for lunch. When the killer's phone rang, Marcus heard him speaking in a warm, friendly voice to someone he was clearly planning to meet and murder. The psychological weight of the moment pressed down on Marcus like a physical force. He had the power to stop this, to save whoever was about to become victim number 18, but doing so would require him to become something he'd never been, a killer himself. Emma's memories whispered that justice sometimes required terrible choices, that some people forfeited their right to live when they stole that right from others. Marcus's moral compass spun wildly as he gripped a heavy wrench, his civilized mind warring with the primal need for vengeance that Emma's consciousness had planted in his soul. The confrontation was swift and brutal. Marcus struck from behind, the wrench connecting with the killer's skull with a sickening crack. As the man collapsed, Marcus felt Emma's memories surge with something that might have been satisfaction, or perhaps peace. But the psychological thriller wasn't over, it was just beginning. Standing over the unconscious killer, Marcus realized he now faced an impossible choice. He could call the police, but explaining how he'd found this place would be nearly impossible without revealing his connection to Emma's memories. Or he could finish what Emma had started, ensuring that this monster never hurt anyone again. The weight of 17 lives hung in the balance, and Marcus understood that his near-death experience hadn't been random, it had been a calling. Emma had chosen him not just to witness her death, but to prevent countless others. As sirens wailed in the distance, someone had heard the struggle and called for help. Marcus made his choice, knowing that some psychological scars are worth bearing if they prevent even greater horrors. The truth about what Marcus ultimately decided that night remains a mystery locked away in the files of the local police department. Some say he was found standing over the unconscious killer, having called 911 himself to report the discovery of a serial killer's workshop. Others whisper that the killer was found dead, and that Marcus had simply vanished into the night, taking Emma's secrets with him. The psychological thriller of his story raises haunting questions about the nature of justice, the connection between life and death, and whether some experiences transcend the boundaries of individual consciousness. What would you have done in Marcus's position? Would you have trusted the legal system to handle such a monster, or would Emma's memories have driven you to take justice into your own hands? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious about how this twisted story affected you. If this psychological thriller left you haunted or questioning the boundaries between life and death, hit that like button and subscribe for more mind-bending stories that explore the darkest corners of human experience. Until next time, stay kind, stay sharp, and stay curious.